What is the impact when a family member is killed by the police? What happens? What are the steps to take? How do you advocate for yourself? And what's the process for healing after that's occurred? Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations for the People with Matthew Solomon. I am Matthew Solomon. I'm really excited to have my friend Marissa Barrera on the show. Marissa is somebody that I met in Sacramento. Her brother Michael was killed by the police in 2017. And since then, she's become a fierce advocate for impacted families. Marissa is an activist, an advocate, and an entrepreneur with a focus on justice and empowerment. She founded Voices of Strength, which is a nonprofit that supports impacted families. And she created Marissa Reports, which is an investigative video series that addresses systemic injustices and police accountability. And then in addition to that, she has a company called Mind Your Fitness. She works as a personal trainer and she creates wellness programs that promote strength, resilience, and balance. And she's a mother, homeschooling her three sons. As a writer, she's working on books that further expose systemic injustices, and she creates impactful content that drives meaningful change in both justice and wellness. So it's my pleasure and my honor to introduce you to Marissa Barrera. Marissa, thank you so much for coming on the show. And just for the people who are listening in, we met I don't even remember, maybe a year ago or beginning of this year. We did a screening in Sacramento that was hosted by Three Sisters Gardens. So shout out to them. And Marissa and I were on the panel and we started talking afterwards and we've stayed in touch since then. And, I'm really inspired by who you are. I mean, there's the activism part and also like your commitment to health and wellness and helping people with that. And you're a mom, amazing mom with, of three, beautiful boys that you're really committed to. And so I'm really excited to have you on the show, to have you be one of my first guests. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been great knowing you. And I think it was about a year ago when we met on the panel. I loved your documentary, by the way. And yeah, it's been great just connecting and seeing what you got going on.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. If you would, if you wouldn't mind like sharing a little bit about your journey and how you got to this point, and then I would love to get into like all the things you're working on.
Yes. Yes. So I began in this advocacy work and fighting for accountability for police in 2017 when my brother was murdered in our hometown of Woodland, California. It was, it's not something that anybody ever expects. You never expect that your loved one was killed by the cops. So it was, it's hard. It's still hard. It's been 7.5 years. I got into this. I came out fighting the day my brother was killed. The police were being shady. They were treating our family badly. They were keeping his body from us. They were doing so much crazy stuff just in those initial hours of us finding out that Michael had been killed. So I realized quickly that this was shady, that I needed to stand up for my brother. I began recording them that first day as I had my interactions with them and just catching them in their life. And yeah, it's been a long fight. It's been a long fight over the last 7.5 years. Unfortunately, my brother has not gotten justice, just like many other people across the country. But we have been fighting consistently. We continue to show up in the city of Woodland, and we have challenged them in many ways. No charges were pressed. Of course, that's usually how it goes down out here in our country when police kill. It's very rare when they actually charge, but we did go through a civil lawsuit. We did sue the city of Woodland. My family accepted a multi-million-dollar lawsuit just earlier this year. Just that alone, that it takes 7 years for that to happen. And that was a settlement. So if we would have continued taking it to trial, like I personally wanted to, it could be 10 years. And it's been a long fight. So I really have just kind of, it changed my life in many ways. You know, I became aware to the realities out here. And I've met a lot of other families and victims of police brutality who are in the same fight. I've changed my work. I've changed my friends, the people I go around. And yeah, I'm just still here, just doing what I can.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's amazing, like 7 years out, right? And you were saying it's still really not resolved. Like there's a settlement, but you've also shared with me, and if you don't mind sharing, because it's not just this event happens and then we go to court and then like, that's it 7 years down the line. Like you've told me about how, you've been harassed and things like that. If you wouldn't mind sharing about that.
Yes. Yes, I was actually just editing a video of one of my stories sharing about the harassment about a specific time. So yes, just from the beginning, day one, just the way we were treated, it felt like for a normal death, and if the police or anybody shows up, you would expect a normal person. Like I would give someone condolences. I would be feeling for them. I would want to help them or at least comfort them. We don't get that. So I knew quickly that they were the enemy, and the harassment started very quickly. It wasn't just the police, it was the community too. It would be people just trying to pick at us. People actually came onto forums for like the groups of our neighborhood. It's called Good Neighbors of Woodland. And people would while I was being vocal about what was happening, the story changing 5 times in the first 2 days, we actually had people come on and thank all the officers that killed my brother and cheer them on and tell them they did a great job and we're glad the officers are safe. Well, my brother never attacked or even attempted to attack officers ever. So, just things like that. It happens not just to my family, but all the families. Just within days, two of the officers that killed my brother were harassing my dad. They were by the apartments, and one of the officers has harassed my mom at her work. She worked in Woodland. She barely retired earlier this year. So even just last year, killer cops of her son, showing up at her work. So personally, the killer cops never rolled up to me, which I found that to be interesting that they would harass my parents and not me, the one being the most vocal. But I think they probably knew to stay away from me. While I still lived there for the first year in that city, just constantly cops coming by. I found a dead bird before, right place in a spot that was very odd, but it was right in front of my car. And then even cops going to social media and talking about me. Marissa's inciting violence in this community. That was one of the posts by one of the officers who came onto the scene of my brother's house, even though it didn't happen at his house. These days, I think, I don't go in Woodland anymore. I don't go to that town, though. When I first moved to a different city, detectives from Woodland came to our house just to kind of be like, they acted like they had a paper from us, which was from the county of Yolo, or the county or the city, I don't remember, but they really had no business showing up to our house. And I did tell them, you got to get off of our property, not in those words, and let them know they weren't welcome there. But these are the type of intimidation tactics and the ways that they do when people are speaking out. They might not always directly threaten you, but if they're in your space or, doing weird stuff like that, popping up when it's not even in their job title or role or jurisdiction to do so. So I learned early on to just try to protect myself by recording. For a long time, I wouldn't say I was scared, but it had me feeling like a little like uneasy at times, knowing I was alone with my son a lot, knowing what they just did to my brother. And so I did spend time, I guess, being a little scared, of what could happen. And these strange men are following me. Other community members had reached out to me, specifically a woman at a store that I happened to shop at twice.
Mhm.
And around the time of my brother's killing, but she reached out later telling me how she actually went to school with my brother, but that the detectives were following me. And she's like, I wish I would have said something the first time, but the second time when he came back after I was there, he was watching me, pretending to read stuff, but watching me.
Mm.
And then he asked her for the surveillance footage from their store. She did not give it to him because, well, she told me they were broken anyways, but that she just said without, if he's the police officer, they need to take the correct procedures. But yeah, so just knowing
Yeah.
that was the first incident of that was the first month my brother was killed. It was within weeks. So
Wow.
that's how quickly I was being followed by strange men in suits, men in black. I don't know what we
Mm.
want to call them, but yeah.
Yeah.
Fast forward to this day, I still do have incidents here and there, but for the most part, I stay away from that area. I kind of stay to myself, and I know how to approach them now and scare them off, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, I've heard you share this, one of the things, one of the many things that's been really striking is, traveling around with the film and being in all these cities. We've done to date 62 screenings, right? So I've been in Dallas and New Jersey, all up and down New Jersey, and uh, all these other places, and there are always people in the room who have been impacted by police violence. And so, like people might say, oh, well, this is just an isolated incident, or like the whole like bad apples, good apples thing. But these stories are consistent. And even in LA here, there's a reporter, Cerise Castle, who she broke the story on the gangs in the LA County Sheriff's Department. And she's been harassed. Like she had to go into hiding. She's had to wear like, bulletproof vests and things like that. And so, um, that's one of the things that I'm glad. I know it's hard. I'm glad you share, because it's kind of like common practice, which is really upsetting and in a lot of ways. I don't even have the word for it. And then
Yeah.
and then I know like you uh have gotten into advocacy, and you work with impacted families, and you have an organization, or I don't know, several organizations, I'm not sure. But if you could talk about like the work that you're doing in along those lines.
Yeah, it does feel like several
Yeah.
organizations doing the work I do. Yeah, so I hopped into this. One of the first things I realized while being impacted was that a lot of support was coming from strangers. And then those strangers ended up sharing their stories like, I support you, justice for Michael Barrera. My loved one was killed by X police department. So I started realizing, wow, like there's a lot of people. And then as I continue, some of these families who had been around longer than me, showed me the ropes or explained things to me. For example, the gang stalking when that was happening. And they're like, hey, this is what you're going through, and this is what I experienced, and this is what they normally do to families. And so it's just really like when it happened from our hometown, the support really wasn't there, besides, few individuals and people. Definitely not our family, definitely not our friends, like very few of them. I would say handful between me and my immediate family. Like they don't, they just people with the police narrative and being against the police, people are either scared or they don't believe us or they just don't care. But so I found community within other activists and impacted families. And what I started to realize as I continued to speak out, I felt like, hey, all of our stories are very similar. They all have their own unique details, crazy details, but they're all very similar. So in 2020, over the years, I was just doing different stuff. I would go to do speaking engagements, do different legislative lobbying, and push for different bills, show up at events, just writing. I was writing on different articles of police killings for Photography is Not a Crime. I was doing that for a while. And then in 2020, I founded a nonprofit called Voices of Strength. And the idea behind that was to support impacted families. And one of the first projects we kicked off was a series of interviews, one-on-one interviews, myself as the host, with different impacted families from across the country. Right now there's over 40 on our website, voicesofstrength.info. And I did that for a while. I did that while I was having babies. I was in my pregnancy.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I would still, go out in person and do stuff, but I found that it was important to document our stories. And some of these families had never had an interview. Some of these mothers that I reached out to and invited them for interviews, like literally told me that no one has ever even asked about their kid. No one ever asked how they feel. No one ever asked about their story. And some of them, the areas they were living in, there was not an activist community out there. There were not other families speaking up. So they're kind of by themselves. So I gave the families, we had the platform, we were doing lives, and we were just really kind of joining together to share our stories, support each other, get other people to understand. And so it's still documented. I feel like all of our stories, no matter how many years ago, are important. All of us haven't got justice. And so with Voices of Strength, we amplify the stories, support victims, and either have resources or can send them to where they can find help and resources. And just offering support calls was a important thing. And that's how I met some of the families that I am even the most close to right now. Supporting them, just being an ear for them, but also being able to provide insight and direction. And it has helped families. So that's one of the things we do within Voice of Strength. We also put together another project, Killer Cops USA, where we highlight and expose the cops, because some of these families don't even know who killed their loved ones still. Some don't have photos. And I felt that, well, I did notice, after Killer Cops, sometimes they will become killer cops. Sometimes they will try to wipe the internet of their photos, try to hide them, try to keep them a secret. So I felt I wanted to put their faces and their names out there and any information about the killing, about the victim. So right now, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of volunteers or support. We are a very small team. So, but we do have a bunch of killer cops up there. Unfortunately, my list of cops we need to add is a lot longer.
Yeah.
But, we're chipping away and doing what we can right now.
Yeah.
And then I also started recently doing, I realized I have been doing this over the years, like find stories, repeat it to other people, share it. And I started Marissa Reports. I realized I had been reporting these stories over the years. I wanted to find a way to, with the way social media is, the interviews we were doing, they were long, an hour long. So it's hard to retain attention in that way. A lot of the support was coming from people we already knew, and we would meet new people, but with social media and people's attention span, I'm like, we need to get these stories condensed. And I started Marissa Reports just a month ago. And part of that is because I realized a lot of people don't read or research. So I do. I spend a lot of time reading and researching, and people do like to hear news, though. They like to hear updates. They like to be informed at times. And so I felt that the way to repeat the story in a way that people can take it in and understand to help continue to raise awareness. But with Marissa Reports, I'm not only covering homicides by police, because over the years, what I've also found is that we're not the only ones out here suffering. There are victims of police brutality who have survived and are deeply suffering, whether it's physical, mental, and emotionally. They are suffering. And I have talked to some of these victims who have been killed. I mean, not killed, almost killed in ways that, similar to my brother, for example, being asphyxiated, being held down, being pinned down, deprived of your oxygen, and not being able to breathe. Those victims, they suffer deeply. They're very traumatized. I mean, I can't really imagine being in that position too, but I've gotten their stories, and not even just victims of police brutality, but we find that there are a lot of people done wrong by police or the system. One of the weekly, which I'm posting one today, segments that I'm covering for Marissa Reports is we're covering the predator police, sexual predators who are in blue. And I thought that was important because there are a lot of them. And they kind of just get brushed under the rug if they even do get any attention. So a lot of those crimes are against children as well. I just did one last week. He was a school resource officer for nearly a decade with complaints over the years, and they left him in that position with the ability to harm children. So I feel like, realizing that impacted families are not the only ones suffering. It's the people on the street who are being harassed and abused too. My brother was brown skin. He's darker skin than me, and just knowing the difference of how my peers too, like, were treated because they're guys, and I'm a woman, so I did get, I don't want to call it woman privilege, but cops are more likely to assault men and kill them. There's more. So I also see cases of other homicide cases where the police don't care, don't treat those families, don't give those cases the respect. They're another one. We have wrongful convictions. We have missing people that are not being looked for, depending on who they are, what they look like, or who they know. And I just realized this corruption is just so spread out, and people, as sad as it is to say, people don't want to keep hearing our I don't know, like, it's like I'm trying to find a way to bring awareness at the same time make people care. In my mind, I'm like, shouldn't we all? I would hope that most of us are against predators and rapists. I would hope, unless people themselves are that. So just trying to find a way to uplift other stories and bring attention to the fact that they're wronging a lot of people. And it goes into, it's further than the police, it's the officials above them, the courts, the DAs, the judges, and seeing firsthand all of this, because I have sat across from judges, magistrate judges that had to deal with these people firsthand who try to force my family into things, who try to make us believe things that weren't true. And just having to stand up. And I have empathy for the other victims and families. And I hope we see change while we're here still, because it feels like 7.5 years I have, as I mentioned earlier, been involved in different legislative work, getting bills passed with other families, lobbying, and families initiating their own bills and stuff. But there have been multiple bills passed regarding police accountability out here, or oversight. And honestly, it really hasn't made changes, because people are still being killed. Officers are still not being charged. They still find loopholes. So yeah, just seeing a lot. It's difficult, but just trying to find ways to at least keep active in my personal self, and being out there and sharing the truth.
Yeah. And it occurred to me, because you were saying, Voices of Strength, you have 60 families, is that right? You were saying 60 families that you've been working with? with
There's about 40 interviews, but we've worked with a lot more families over the years.
okay. Yeah, and so, you know, last year, 2023, police killed that were able to be counted over 1,300 people, and so one of the things you were saying that has really driven me in this work is I always thought people would care more. And if people just knew, oh, there's systemic racism, or oh, there's, racial disparities in policing, or oh, there's like police brutality. Because I grew up in LA, and I was going to college when the Rodney King beating happened. So it was like that was the first time really that something was caught on camera that everybody all over the world saw, that was like on repeat. And it's like, oh, okay, things can change, right? And then what, 20 something, I don't know, 30 years later, I guess Trayvon Martin, 20, I don't know. My math. I had COVID, so my math isn't working. But you know, Trayvon Martin, but then like Michael Brown and Eric Gardner, and then we fast forward to George Floyd, and like all of these things still being caught on camera, even more cameras now, right?
Yeah,
Like if it wasn't for people with cameras, George Floyd would have been, his murder would have been swept under the rug because the police lied
completely.
on their police report. And even since George Floyd, there have been more killings each year,
Yeah,
all caught on camera, like the body cams. I mean, this is a whole other thing, but body cams have actually, like, police violence has increased in some places because they feel justified, or, the cameras can be used to manipulate things. So like, and police weren't really tracking this stuff,
yeah,
so it's like advocacy groups like, mappingpoliceviolence.us, are the ones who are doing it. So we're really kind of still at the mercy of what's being reported and what can we confirm. And so there's a lot that goes by. And getting back to your point of, yeah, the belief that, oh, if people see this, they'll care and they'll do something. And it's been very disheartening to get that no, people just would rather be comfortable or not have to face it. And one of the things I wanted to ask you also, because when these events happen, and when people become advocates and organizers, there was a life before that, and there's a whole dimension of folks like you, that gets left out of the conversation. So I've been curious, like, what were you doing before your brother was murdered, and what was the trajectory, that your life was on?
yeah, yeah. I was a whole different person. I look back, like I feel like, I mean, I was 28 when my brother was killed, but I feel like I was a baby and I didn't know anything back then. At least not regards to this stuff. But I was involved in the fitness. I had a fitness business over the years. I had worked in gyms. I spent over a decade working in that industry, and about a decade. I'm like, wait, how old am I? And that's what I was known for in my town too, Marissa, was that fitness trainer.
Mhm.
I like to say I trained half the town because I trained so many people over the years. And so that's why when Michael was killed, some of the people did, support, send condolences, and offer support in different ways. I had just had a fundraiser a few months before that for a child who, RIP to Ruben, but he was a child who had brain cancer, and it was a very long drawn out process. And this family was, sharing their story, and they needed help. And I didn't see many people in this good neighbors group pouring out support for this family. So I did what I knew how to do at that time, which is I organized an event, I organized a fundraiser, a fitness one, and I invited people. Only a couple people, no, a lot of people showed, but only like you didn't see all these businesses, all these people coming out to support this child who was dying.
Yeah.
And so that was, and my brother came to that too. My brother came and he bought all the raffle tickets and he won
Mhm.
like all the prizes. And I started taking the prizes back. I'm like, you can't win them all, like while we're calling the names. So
Yeah.
when this happened and I was vocal, there's a lot of people wanting to attack me, but at the same time, there were people who knew who I was and that I had a good name. I had done good stuff, and so some people did listen, but at the time I was managing a gym, and that's where I was when I got the call from my mom that something happened. And I worked a couple towns away, so she obviously didn't tell me on the phone that my brother was killed, but I knew it was something bad and I had
Yeah.
to get to the hospital. um I worked there for a little longer, but
Hmm.
it was just like everything going on, it just didn't work out. I didn't have the capacity for that at the time. So, I just really I hopped into all of this. I started showing up to events by myself. Like I look back,
Mm.
I'm like, dang, I was pretty brave just to go to these walk up in these events by myself, go support other people or go see what's up, make connections. And that's what I would do. That's how I met a lot of people out here, and started showing up to other impacted families events when they were maybe a couple hours away, but doable when new people died and stuff. Um, so I didn't realize this. I barely realized this recently as I've been getting back into the fitness scene, because I think when we first met, I mentioned to you that I was wanting to, or
Yeah. Yeah. And you had it was before you started getting back into fitness. So since we've known
yeah,
each other, yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
So I didn't realize back over all these years I had already been involved in advocacy for health and fitness. That barely clicked with me
Hmm.
recently, but I really, enjoyed helping people in that way. I started working out and strength training when I was a teenager, like before I even turned 18. I was taking weight training in school. I just wanted to get strong. I was really thin. I was self-conscious. I was just I wanted to make changes. I used to read all the fitness
Mm.
magazines, Women's Fitness and Hers, Oxygen. I would study. I would have my subscriptions. I would go to the library. I would read, and that's how I started with that. And
Yeah. I
I
remember,
feel like, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. Like you told me that you wanted to be a wrestler also. Like
Oh
that
yeah,
was,
yeah. I did try out for Tough Enough that WWE had going. They didn't pick me though.
uh,
They're lost.
yeah, totally. Totally.
But yeah, yeah. So that's what I did. I would do boot camps. I would have group trainings, trained a lot of women and mothers over the years. And yeah, so just over this past year, I have so much on my plate. So it feels like I want to do everything,
Yeah.
but I have slowly been getting back into the fitness scene. And when I look at I'm a big thinker, and I like spend a lot of time just deep thinking. But when I look at the families, the activists, just people in this fight, I know firsthand
Yeah.
how draining and how difficult it is to even keep up with this, to stay afloat while we're fighting back. And especially when you've lost a loved one, you're dealing with that grief. You might be dealing with the retaliation. You're dealing with losing your folks, losing your life before, your friends, your
Mhm.
family. It's a lot. It's not just grieving your loved one, it's like that comfort you had before.
Yeah.
So when I look at people in this fight, I see the need for people to get more active physically, to take care of
Mhm.
their bodies and their minds. Because I always say, even before my brother was killed and I was involved with it, like exercise, staying on my fitness, not even just trying to be like the most fit person in the world, but regularly going and being active, taking care of my body. And it's helped me through life.
Yeah.
It's helped me through depression. It's helped me through grief. It's helped me through some of these worst times. And if I didn't go and do that, I don't know, I could be in jail or something. I could have went off. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's,
But
I
I
mean,
do see the need.
oh, sorry. I
You're
was,
good.
I got excited. I wanted to, no, but that's one of the things that, I really appreciate you and has been inspiring watching you on social media is that, you, there's the hard things that you deal with and are involved with. And then you're also at the same time posting inspirational content and talking about like taking care of yourself and, posting your gains and, so being on the journey, seeing and knowing that your awareness of how your physical health affects your mental health and spiritual health and the importance of maintaining that. So that's something I want to make sure people know about, and I really appreciate you. And I also know you're writing a book, so I'd love to hear what that is. And we're getting short on time, but I want people to know like where they can reach you, and I would love to hear
Yeah.
about your book also.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for pointing that out, because I know that when people look at my social media, it's very diverse. I
Yeah.
might have the police accountability stuff, my own story, and then I'm like, let's go work out,
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. You appreciate that. And, I'm trying to tie everything in together. So it's a lot, but
Yeah.
yes, I am working on a book. I actually have a series of books in progress. It's Killed by Police. And the first book I'm starting with is The Get Down. So the Get Down covers the steps that the police and officials take after they take our loved one's life. So
Mm.
this consists of, and I know this firsthand from my own story, but after interviewing one-on-one all these stories and reading, I can't even tell you how many stories I've studied and read, but I see the steps. For example, they kill them, and for some they don't contact. They try to delay contacting family, buying themselves time. Then they release a false narrative. They might, like our story, they hid his body from us and denied us that right, even though we were there. And my parents especially had every right to have those last moments with their son. From the criminal and civil side of how that goes down, and then also just things like the false narrative, how that connects into our support and how the community reacts to it, because that has a lot of control. We
Yeah.
talk about the complicity of not just the police and officials, but we're talking about the investigating agency. For us, that's Yolo County Sheriffs. We have the Yolo County DA. They all helped cover up my brother's story. They all played us, and they all manipulated and falsified the story, so
Yeah.
to make themselves look good. So yeah, it really covers the steps. I have 20 chapters, and
Mm.
it's a mixture of, of course I share pieces of our story within it, but I'm really, for that one, sticking to it because I believe, I don't know what it looks like, I don't know what it's called. They have some kind of guidelines, some manual, some book of their steps when they kill our loved ones, and it's deep. So I feel that's important. I've been speaking on it over the years, but I feel like it's important to have it in the book form, have it
Yeah.
out there. And I mean, honestly, this might sound crazy, but it almost kind of slightly might be a goal of mine for my books to be banned one day, because they do that.
Yeah.
They do that stuff, and I just feel like I'm trying to leave my mark. I'm leaving behind and not letting. I tell people, like, even though we haven't got justice for our loved ones, like true justice and accountability, none of us have that. As long as we're fighting,
Yeah.
calling them out,
Yeah.
speaking our truth as loud as we can, we're in the good fight. I know we are on the right side of history. Like, I know this in my heart to be true. So that's why I want to leave my mark. The other books in that series, one is covering my brother's story. One will be of the work I've already done, of exposing killer cops, but I'm going to put all of that information into a book form so that they're in a book too, and their faces and what they did to the victims and whatnot. And yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm hoping to get those done. I realized, I got Voices of Strength, I got Marissa Reports, I got
Mm.
my books, I got my fitness, I got all of that. And my life is a little crazy. I do have 3 kids, as you
Yep.
mentioned,
That you
and I
homeschool.
homeschool them.
Right.
So I actually did create a new website, a personal website, marissabarrera.online.
Oh,
And that's where
awesome.
people could go to find my different things, my advocacy,
Oh, great.
my books, my personal, my fitness website is connected to there, because I do have a fitness website. My fitness business is called Mind Your Fitness. So I encourage everybody to mind your fitness.
Yes.
Like, gosh, there's nothing better you could do than take care of yourself that way. So Marissa Barrera online. I'm on social media. Everything's linked from the website. And yeah, I'm always happy to connect with different people in this fight, different fighters, survivors, impacted families, and uplift their stories as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I wish we had more time. I always appreciate connecting with you, and I'm grateful that you took the time to come on
Yeah,
today.
thank you.
So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you too for everything you do. I see you out there. You're making some noise and you're doing good stuff. So appreciate you as well.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much for listening in, and big thank you to Marissa Barrera for being on the show. Please check out her website at marissabarrera.online. Visit and watch reimaginingsafetymovie.com. Make sure you hit the subscribe and like button and join us next time. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, all power to the people.